What's going on, everybody, and welcome back once again to the channel. And in this video I'm going to be doing my recap slash takeaways from the 2023 XFL season now that it's officially over. But before we get into that, happy Mother's Day, Mom. I love you very much. You helped me get this YouTube channel off the ground, and I really can't thank you enough for everything you do. I love you. But moving on here. Obviously, the XFL Championship 2023 happened last night, and the Arlington Renegades had an upset win over the DC Defenders. Now, how fitting is it that in a league of second opportunity, a team that had a losing record in the regular season was able to get into the playoffs and win it all, and have a quarterback who they traded for in the middle of the year, who was not having a great year with the Vipers, and he got a second chance with a new team, went on to win the XFL MVP in his second chance, and this team had a second chance once they were in the playoffs in a league of second opportunity. That the silver lining there is incredible. The stars aligned for the Arlington Renegades. They finished the season with a 6-6 record. For the DC Defenders, it was one heck of a season. Overall, they went 10-2. It's definitely got to be disappointing for them to not be able to close it out. I think they feel, and rightfully so, that they were the best team throughout this whole year, and they were the class of the league, and not to have a championship to show for it there at the end definitely has to hurt if you're the DC Defenders. You can see it in Jordan Ta'amu's look, but yeah, I mean, but looking back as the season as a whole, I mean, it was a heck of a ride. I mean, no team gave up. Even the Orlando Guardians, who had a 1-9 record, they gave a tough game to everybody down the stretch. They did not fold. The Houston Roughnecks and Wade Phillips had a good year. The San Antonio Brahmas had a chance there at the end, but they stayed fighting. The Arlington Renegades, as we just mentioned, they won it all. The DC Defenders, obviously we just mentioned. The Sea Dragons, they were a very explosive team. They made it to the playoffs. The St. Louis Battlehawks, with a 7-3 record, obviously missed the playoffs, but they still had a very good season. The Vegas Vipers were able to find a spark there towards the end of the season and could give them some momentum going into next season. But yeah, I mean, it was a successful first year for the XFL, and I really hope this league can continue, and I believe it can. Obviously, it will face the challenges of players leaving for the NFL, but all the XFL teams have the rights to their players. So if those players don't move on, these teams will still have their guys. So there will be that sense of continuity right there. Going back to the championship game, though, I mean, the Renegades were able to get the 35-26 victory, and it may have seemed surprising to a lot of people, but the signs were there for the Defenders. They clearly were not a unbeatable team. They obviously lost to the Guardians, who presumably were the worst team in football. The Defenders were in a lot of close games, and then the Renegades had a lot of momentum heading into it, and you can tell they just came in fired up, ready to go. I think they were tired of hearing that they didn't deserve to be there. And I think maybe the Defenders, were a little bit hungover from the great regular season and that playoff win over the Sea Dragons, and already playing the Renegades and beating them may have gotten to their head a little bit. And it ultimately cost them. But a couple of drop passes, a couple of missed throws, and the Defenders could have easily ended up winning this game, or at least having a little bit of a tighter ending there. But the Renegades completely outplayed them in that game. They were clearly the more prepared team, the more focused team, and that's what ultimately led to the W. And as I mentioned, Luis Perez won the MVP. I've been following his journey over the last couple of years, and it's pretty cool to see him come out on top here with the Renegades. He came close last year with the Generals over in the USFL, and now he gets it here with the Renegades and wins the MVP. And he is the big reason to their turnaround. They didn't have much stability at the quarterback position, and he came in and was a guy who was able to spread the ball around, be a good leader, elevate the guys around him, and he clearly made the difference. Bob Stoops, he won another football championship. This was obviously a big one up there on his list. Pretty impressive resume that Bob Stoops has created there. Jordan Thomo clearly had a tough game. He had the same amount of interceptions in this game as he did all season. Not completely all his fault, but it was definitely a rough game for Tamu and company. And the Looking at the season as a whole, AJ McCarron won the XFL MVP, deservingly so. I think he edged out Danucci because he had way less turnovers. Fortunately for him, his team didn't even make the playoffs despite having a 7-3 record. But yeah, I mean AJ McCarron, another great story in this league. A guy who wanted to had a opportunity to play in the NFL, but he chose the XFL because he wanted his kids to see him play in live action, not not be in the bench somewhere in the NFL. And he was able to have a heck of a season and win the MVP. So that is one heck of a story. But again, the XFL as a whole had an awesome season, and this is the first time ever that the XFL has completely finished out a year in a while. Back in 2001, the first iteration of the XFL, the Los Angeles Extreme did win the championship, but then the league was canceled, and then obviously in 2020 the league got hit with COVID, which really hurt it. So they were able to close out this year, and again, it was a awesome year. I mean, the games were, the teams were all gave heart to the end, and that's really all you can ask for in a good football league. I am interested to see where this is going. Obviously, in competition with the USFL for the next few years. Could we see a merger in the coming years? I wouldn't completely rule it out, but before there's a merger, I think the first thing would be is a XFL versus USFL championship where the two champions of each league play each other before there's an actual merger. But yeah, but I think right now the XFL and USFL are both doing fine separately. And the XFL, as we just saw, they are, just completed their first full season, and the USFL over there is now in the, in the deep of their second season. And one last thing here before we close out, a thing that you can really appreciate about the XFL is the transparency with the officiating. I can't remember a single, controversial call where it's left head scratching that really affects the game. There really wasn't any. The transparency where you can hear the referees dialogue amongst each other, and then the dialogue and the explanation given by Dean Blandino, who has the ultimate ruling when things are under review. Great transparency, and it really adds for a clear experience for the viewer and for the players. Comment down below what you guys think. This XFL season has been awesome, and I can't wait for it to come back next year.